Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yamunatira Vanachari. Yamunatira Vanachari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Padavidakacharya Ashtotar Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Padavidakacharya Ashtotar Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnavin Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Okay. Text 21?
Yes, sir.
Oh, very good. All right. Getting better. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay. On his 22nd day of June 2022 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. We are in chapter 4, entitled Transcendental Knowledge, text number 21 on page 208. Yeah. Nirashi yata chittatma tyakta sarva parigraha shariram kevalam karma kurvan napnoti kilbisham nirashiyata chittatma tyakta sarva parigraha shariram kevalam karma kurvan napnoti kilbisham. We need to close the door because it gets noisy out there. Nirashiyata chittatma tyakta sarva parigraha shariram kevalam karma kurvan napnoti kilbisham. Nirashiyata chittatma tyakta sarva parigraha shariram kevalam karma kurvan napnoti kilbisham. Nirashiyata chittatma tyakta sarva parigraha shariram kevalam karma kurvan napnoti kilbisham. Nirashiyata chittatma tyakta sarva parigraha shariram kevalam karma kurvan napnoti kilbisham. Anyone on Zoom?
Nirashiyata chittatma
Nirashiyata chittatma
yakta sarva parigraha
tyakta sarva parigraha
shariram kevalam karma
shariram kevalam karma
kurvan napti kilbisham.
kurvan napnoti kilbisham. Nirashi, without desire for the result. Yata, controlled. Chitta atma, mind and intelligence. Tyakta, giving up. Sarva, all. Parigraha, sense of proprietorship over possessions. Shariram, in keeping body and soul together. Kevalam, only. Karma, work. Kurvan, doing. Na, never. Apnoti, does acquire. Kilbisham, sinful reactions. Translation. Such a man of understanding acts with mind and intelligence perfectly controlled, gives up all sense of proprietorship over his possessions, and acts only for the bare necessities of life. Thus working, he is not affected by sinful reactions. Before I read the purport, I'm going to read the last translation because it refers back to us. Abandoning all attachment to the result of his activities, ever satisfied and independent, he performs no fruit of action, although engaged in all kinds of undertakings. Okay. Purport to 21. A Krishna-conscious person does not expect good or bad results in his activities. His mind and intelligence are fully controlled. He knows that because he is part and parcel of the Supreme, the part played by him as a part and parcel of the whole is not his own activity, but is only being done through him by the Supreme. When the hand moves, it does not move out of its own accord, but by the endeavor of the whole body. A Krishna-conscious person is always dovetailed with the supreme desire, for he has no desire for personal sense gratification. He moves exactly like a part of a machine. As a machine part requires oiling and cleaning for maintenance, so a Krishna-conscious man maintains himself by his work just to remain fit for action in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. He is therefore immune to all the reactions of his endeavors. Like an animal, he has no proprietorship even over his own body. A cruel proprietor of an animal sometimes kills the animal in his possession, yet the animal does not protest, nor does it have any real independence. A Krishna-conscious person, fully engaged in self-realization, has very little time to falsely possess any material object. For maintaining body and soul, he does not require unfair means of accumulating money. He does not, therefore, become contaminated by such material sins. He is free from all reactions to his actions. Om Jnana Timurandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the deepest ignorance, but Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So, one phrase that suddenly pops into my brain from one of Prabhupada's purports, that by acting in Krishna consciousness, one can get free from the chained victimization of karma, action, reaction, action, reaction. It's a chain, meaning that impelled by material desire, cut off from Krishna, we are reacting, we become servants of our senses, the desires that come up from the senses and from the mind. And we work to try to satisfy them. And in doing that, we further untangle ourselves in karma. And so good karma, bad karma, it's all chain, it's part of the chain. So how to break out of that chain victimization? The problem is, if this is called transcendental knowledge, we mentioned this yesterday, that we're really trapped until we get a clue about what's what. It's just like if you're diseased. You need to go to a doctor who has more knowledge than you, who can diagnose what's the problem and give some remedy that you can do. Otherwise, you're at a loss. You may try something and it's make you sicker and it doesn't work. So similarly, we're trapped in this action, reaction, action, reaction, action, reaction since time immemorial, until we can get this knowledge and act on it. So just to go back another verse, because Krishna is describing this person in text 19 also. One is understood to be in full knowledge whose every endeavor is devoid of desire for sense gratification. He is said by sages to be a worker for whom the reactions of work have been burned up by the fire of perfect knowledge. So this is the idea, free of material attachment. Then why does one act? Well, you have to act to keep body and soul together. That's there. How to do that in a Krishna conscious way, so that doesn't interfere with your Krishna consciousness. That's why we have Krishna provided the process of cooking bhoga with Krishna in mind. We're going to offer it to Krishna. It becomes a sacrament rather than just feeding the body, because eating can be a tremendous entanglement, as we know. If you're in complete ignorance, then you're just going to eat what tastes good. And what tastes good is often very, very sinful, I mean, not that prasad doesn't taste good, that can also taste good, but the point is that if that's all there is, it's not going to work. So, nirashir, without desire for the result. This word asha also comes up. In the 16th chapter, we find this memorable phrase that the demons are asha, pasha, shatar, buddha. Asha is a hope, an aspiration for something material. In this case, it can be hope for something spiritual, just like that word appears several times in the Tulsi song. My desire is to be, right? Namo, namo, tulasi Krishna prayasi, namo, namo. Radha Krishna prema bhakti. How's it go? Radha Krishna seva bhava e abhilashi. It's a verb. I'm longing for the service of Radha and Krishna. That's good. But here, this asha is hoping and aspiring for something material. So in the 16th chapter, asha, pasha, shata, buddha, the demons are bound up by hundreds of hopes and aspirations, just like ropes. Asha, pasha. Pasha means rope. Shata, buddha. So there's a nirashir, yata chittatma. In order to do that, one has to control the mind and the intelligence. And the mind and intelligence can only be controlled when they're completely satisfied by being linked up to Krishna. If one is actually absorbed in thinking of Krishna, that's the final place for the mind. Otherwise, you're going here and there, always dissatisfied. The mind is very, very flickering and powerful. Chakta sarva parigraha. This parigraha, this word graha means just what it sounds like, to grab hold of and hold on. You know? And parigraha means all around, is proprietorship over possessions. So you chakta, you give that up. This is right in the Isha Upanishad, the very first verse, mantra. The invocation is Om Purnamada Purna, but the first mantra, Isha Bhasham Idam Sarvam Yakinchit Jagatim Atena Taktin Bunjin Magada Kostasedana. Right? Isha Bhasham, that the Isha, the Lord, is in charge of everything, owns everything. Then what about us? Then we can use those, our service is using our little bit of material energy we can control in the service of the Lord. Now, of course, we know He's supreme, He owns everything, He controls. He doesn't really need our little service. But He makes Himself available to receive that service out of His mercy, through the medium of the spiritual master. And so we do our little cooking, we do a little this, a little that, what we can really do. But Krishna appreciates it. And the first result is that He burns away all these karmic vrittis that are in our background, ready to fructify. That I mentioned last time. It's like burning a seed. These karmic activity is like a seed. At first seemed nothing happened. I had this hamburger. You guys say it's so sinful. I feel fine. But it's a seed. And fructify. What did we heard several times already. Maharaj was reading. I made it very clear. Lord Chaitanya said in his talks with the Qazi, because they're Muslims, they're meat eaters. So why are you killing your mother? That's what he first said. What do you mean? The cow gives milk. So what was it? It was 1,000 years in hell for every hair on the body of the cow. That's just one hamburger. And you go on the whole lifetime. You can imagine it could maybe deter you from doing that. Let's become a vegetarian. So Chakta Sarva Parigraha. So Prabhupada, he explains the whole idea here that we recognize our position as this famous phrase, part and parcel. And what it means is like the hand. And he gives the example of the hand. Hand doesn't have a will of its own. If it starts acting on its own and is moving like this, you're sick, palsy. Right? You can't control it. But when a hand just does what you want it to do, it's an extension of your will. And that's the proper hand. And the famous story, probably, I forget the title of it. In India something. But the senses, the hands and the eyes and the ears and everything, they were saying, what is this? We're doing all this work, and we're going to go to the supermarket, we're getting the food and everything and preparing it. We're doing all the work. And then the stomach enjoys everything. We feed it to the stomach and he very nice. And he's just sitting there. So they went on strike. Because they think we're doing all the work, we're not enjoying. But little did they know that if they went on strike and no more food is going into the mouth, gradually the senses are becoming weak. They can't act, right? Says, okay, now we understand. We better start doing what we're supposed to do. So that's the idea of the... do you want to take a book, Prabhu? You're right. Is that when each sense, each element of your body, you as the intelligence understand, well, this belongs to Krishna. It's meant for His service. And we've been given instruction how we know He's unlimited and He has millions of Lakshmis. He doesn't really need us. But out of His mercy, He's allowing us to serve Him. Just like the deity. We can't see pure spirit in our present condition. So He comes in a form, through the material energy, through the stone or wood or metal, that we can see Him and serve Him. It's not that He's just a statue. That's we say, don't think of Him as a statue. This is Krishna when He comes. That's why we should be on time, when the curtain's open. If I was to tell you, did you hear, Prabhu? Did you hear? Krishna and Radharani are actually coming to the Mangalarti this morning. Really? Yes, I heard it from Prabhupada. Yeah. Oh, okay. Is anyone going to be late? No, there they are. So that's the way we should feel. There they are. They've come to bless us with their, pristine, soothing, blissful presence. And we should be very eager to. I remember when I first came here, this is a tradition I think that started way before I got here, that before the curtains opened, we start singing. Jaya Gaur-Nita, Jaya Gaur-Nita, and be like 50 devotees in the temple. Jaya Gaur-Nita, Jaya Gaur-Nita, and then the curtains would open. Haribol, Gaur-Nita ki Jaya, and everyone bowed down, That's actually, we can try it again. Problem is that no one comes on time. Half the time I'm here alone. Maybe. No, not half. But anyway, so this sounds, if it's in its, if you just read these verses without the context, you don't understand the philosophy. This sounds like, what do you mean without desire for the results? Why should I go to work? Chaktak sarva parigraha? Give up sense of proprietorship? I work so hard to get that car and the house and all the things you have. Now I'm going to say, give it up? It's not mine? No way, Jose, as they used to say. That's out of ignorance, is it? In other words, the advantage of simply working, shararam kevalam karma, just to keep the body and soul together. In other words, that we have a right to do, we should do, because this is Krishna's, Prabhupada, he was very insistent that the devotees maintain their health, out of concern for their welfare, but also because this is like a tool, it's like a car, it's like this is how we're serving Krishna, with the senses, and the mind, and everything. So, shariram kevalam, so working minimally, living as simply as possible, let's put it that way, not exaggerating, because it may look like an advantage, but it's a disadvantage, because it gives you more things that you're attached to, they will bring you back. So we want to be attached to those things that can be used in Krishna's service and care for them very nicely, realizing these aren't ours, but they're gifts that Krishna has given us to enable us to serve Him. And we can think of our own body that way. So activity that's done with that consciousness and in that mood is not binding. What is the result of such activity? Such activity nourishes the growth of your bhakti creeper in your heart. You see? Because don't forget, as was it Ananda Chaitanya was this, I think he was describing how we have to keep the goal in mind of what we're looking for. And is the activity I'm doing now, is that furthering the goal or taking me farther away from it? If it's under the modes of nature and it's not Krishna's service, then it's prolonging our sojourn in this material world. It's self-defeating. It's self-defeating. So korva napnati kilbisham. The word kilbisham means sin, really, sinful reaction. But this is napnati kilbisham. Whatever you do, so you're acting. Karma is there, but it's not karma it's not activity that produces a reaction. It's really akarma, as defined in previous. It's activity that has no reaction. And in this sense, it's inaction in action. Inaction being that activity that has no karmic result. So devotees aren't into inaction per se, but we're very much into what's called naishkarmya, activity that does not bind, but rather relieves us of previous karma. And that's what Krishna consciousness is, the activity. And that's sadhana bhakti. That sadhana leads toward purification, until the actual attraction to Krishna develops, and bhava and prema, near the top of the ladder. So this is Krishna is giving this central philosophy. The devotee moves like a part in the machine. As a machine part requires oiling, cleaning, maintenance, so Krishna consciousness maintains himself by work just to remain fit for action in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. So just one more point on this is that the key element in everything we do in Bhakti Yoga is the motive. Why are you doing what you're doing? You see? And the default in the conditioned state is, well, I'm doing it to, for me and mine, the body, my own body, that's me, right? That's the first mistake. And those who I've developed a close attachment to, in this temporary attachment in this life. The wife, the children, whatever it may be. I'm working for them also, And maybe get a little broader, the clan, a greater family, or the country, whatever it may be. So that's false ego. That's the false ego. The real ego, which we don't have yet because we're moving toward that. We're still in illusion, but we know what we want to move toward, is that I'm an eternal servant of Krishna. I'm a spirit soul. I don't die. And when I can realize, and it's revealed to me, my actual eternal form and function and pastimes in relation to Krishna, then I'll be rid finally of this mistake I made of leaving the spiritual world, turning my back on Krishna, which has just resulted in a whole bunch of suffering. And I can return again to my original form. So if we keep that goal in mind, then every activity between now and then, when we leave this body, becomes clear. It has to be in the realm of the verse. Like there's a verse in the 11th canto, the 9-year Genda speaking, and he's describing the mentality of a devotee, moment to moment, because we're always doing something. You're breathing, you're moving, you're walking, So to realize, to be in such a state that, okay, now I'm walking from here to there, I'm doing it for Krishna. The mission I'm on for doing is Krishna, And so he says, Kayena vacha, Kayena vacha manasindriyava buddhyatmanava nusudadvabhavat kadodi yadyat sakalam parasmai narayanaya iti samarpayeta. Famous verse. So this is like an expansion of Yat Karoshi Yadashnasi Yadjahosi, you find in the Gita. So he says, whatever we do, now he covers the whole territory. Kayena, with the body, vacha, the words, manasa, mind, indriya, senses. Kayena vacha manasindriyava buddhi, the intelligence. Buddhyatmana, I think in the self. Whatever we have gotten due to previous activities, we have a certain set of these. So, karoti yadyat, whatever you do with these, sakalam, everything. Parasmai narayanati. You see, this is an offering to Narayan. I'm walking from point A to point B, and the purpose is Narayan. This is part of my service. It's just like you can meditate on that walking, just like you might meditate on making a garland for Krishna or addressing the deities. It's all the same thing. So if you're fully Krishna conscious, and we saw that with Srila Prabhupada, the subtle difference is to pick up a phone. Pick up a phone. But he's picking up a phone because he's picking up a phone and talking for Krishna. Or to speak of cooking and all these different things. If the consciousness is there, why am I doing this? Why am I doing it? It's doing it for Krishna. That's pure, and there's no question of karma there. It's just acts of devotion. Everything you do, every breath. That's the ultimate sense. Okay, any discussion on text 21? Yes, Prabhu.
So, Prabhu, this acting without desire for the result, it is clear in the material activities, but when you are doing like book distribution or like a spiritual activity, can we aspire for good results?
Aspire for success.
Yeah, when spiritual deeds.
You can, you should, but if you're not immediately successful, you can't let it throw you. It says, all right, Krishna's testing me. See how sincere I am. Let me pray. Let me pray harder. And the book distributors will explain this is an essential frame of mind, not to let it throw you, because some days you may not distribute a book for hours. So you can see that as a test from Krishna, and you can then just identify with Queen Kunti. Let these dangers come again and again, we see you again and again. So this is, I'm helpless. I thought it was a big book distributor, but I can see I'm just a fool. So Krishna, if you like, as Prabhupada prayed, he taught us how to pray in that Markandeya Bhagavad Dharma. You must have some reason for bringing me here to this spot, in the park, to distribute your books. So please make my power of speaking such that they'll understand and inspire them to take a book. That's, And if you pray hard like that, then Krishna will bless you. So that's the that's an advantageous position to be in, to really be in a position where it's a challenge. You have to summon your whatever reservoir of surrender and sincerity you have. So that's it. Yes, Raj. Is it working? Now it is.
regarding the self-service and serving to Krishna when you're handing out books, I think people that are not in that state of mind, they can probably sense that blissfulness. And therefore, if you're doing it without the need for success, those are the people that become successful. Because the people that you interact with, they feel that presence. Of
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. You're absolutely correct. In other words, that they feel, they say, oh, this person is not trying to rip me off or make money. He's actually doing it, because it's sincerely. Yeah. That's a very good point. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, so my question, not related to 21, but in general. Krishna has all the qualities, right? The most attractive. The most
64 out of 64.
64. And I have been observing all my life since I am born. People who worship Lord Krishna, they also get very attractive.
Really?
People who worship Krishna, they also get very wealthy. I've seen in India also and here also. I've also seen people who worship Krishna, they get all, because Krishna has those qualities, but I think people get a lot also when they worship Lord Krishna, even though they don't have desires, or maybe they have desires, whatever it is. But even if you see brahmacharis, or if you see different devotees, whether male or female, or kids, whosoever, whether in Vrindavan or in any temple, appearance-wise also, they are way attractive than other people who are not worshipping Lord Krishna. Also, if you see devotees, especially here, or I've seen, like in my families, my relatives, they also get a lot of wealth. Whatever business they do, whatever jobs they are into, if they are any sort of activity they are performing, they flourish in everything. So what do you have to say about that?
Well, I would question the wealth part, because spent some time in America. It may happen like that, but generally speaking, Srila Prabhupada eventually became very wealthy. Materially, although he obviously didn't spend it as someone who's ordinarily wealthy would spend it. He always said, oh, great, let's build a temple. Sometimes he explained, I had no idea, that this was going to happen. In fact, in the early days, you read about his life, and he was going back to the pier, to the port, to check on the boats that were leaving for India. Because, he's living in the Bowery, in a loft with some crazy guy, and at first he didn't have anywhere. And he said, okay, I tried, but he never went back, obviously. He never got on that boat. So, and all this time in India, he wasn't wealthy. He was able to raise money to print his books, and things like that. And sometimes you find devotees, you read about Lord Chaitanya's devotees, they're very, very poor, materially. So that's not, it depends. Sometimes that wealth comes and so that they can do great services, and we see that. So, and there's a pastime, in the Krishna book. It says, well, why is it, why the devotees of Shiva, they're often extremely wealthy, but he lives under a tree. But Krishna, Narayan, lives in the palace, in Vaikuntha, and his devotees, Shuklam, Kolavecha Sridhar, some of them are extremely poor. So it may happen like that, that you get wealthy. And we, of course, have our Ambarish Prabhu, who is a multimillionaire, and perfect example. He used it for building the TOVP and, the memorial there in Mayapur. So the idea is that wealth may come or not come, but the question is, what's your attitude to it? There's so many wonderful kings, very wealthy kings. But we find like Ambarish, he was ideal. He was a king, but he was a pure devotee. He was hearing about Krishna, and whatever he had, he was using in Krishna's service. Ideal. And these other kings, Parikshit and other Yudhishthira, So the wealth may be there, but the question is, what is your feeling of the wealth? What is your attitude toward the wealth? And we saw the perfect example of the demons. They become extremely wealthy. Hiranyaksha means always looking for gold. Prabhupada said that he apparently mined the gold in Brazil and brought it back to Lanka. No, that was Ravana. Ravana and Ravana's brother, And so for some time, you can be fabulously wealthy. But the demons, ultimately, it's all taken away, at least by death or by Krishna directly. But the devotees, they become very wealthy. They may inherit a lot of money or something. And they say, oh, great, let me build a temple, or let me do this. So it's a question of what is it? Chakta Sarva Parigya, they give up all sense of proprietorship. Who owns it really, and how should it be used? And Prabhupada showed the perfect way. He had rupees, a couple of rupees when he came, and basically for a year he was living just on charity. But then when the movement took off, after some time he had millions. Okay, he build the temple in Vrindavan, Mayapur, and Bombay. He was ready to. In fact, there was a joke. I think it was one of the famous yogis in India, and he says money was coming, and he says no. And Prabhupada said, "Bring me the money." I was like, "Yeah, bring it." Yeah. Let's print books. When you ever get money, print books. And there's a worldwide book publishing program. So once again, it's the consciousness by which you deal with these things. All right, let's go on. Yadvicha labha santushto dvanvatito vimatsaraha samak siddha siddhaucha kvitvapi nanabhadyate. He who is satisfied with gain which comes of its own accord, who is free from duality and does not envy, who is steady in both success and failure, is never entangled although performing actions. Purport. A Krishna conscious person does not make much endeavor even to maintain his body. He is satisfied with gains which are obtained of their own accord. He neither begs nor borrows, but he labors honestly as far as is in his power, and is satisfied with whatever is obtained by his own honest labor. He is therefore independent in his livelihood. He does not accept engagement in anyone's service if it might hamper his own service in Krishna consciousness. However, for the service of the Lord, he can participate in any kind of action without being disturbed by the duality of the material world. The duality of the material world is felt in terms of heat and cold, or misery and happiness. A Krishna conscious person is above duality because he does not hesitate to act in any way for the satisfaction of Krishna. Therefore, he is steady both in success and in failure. These signs are visible when one is fully in transcendental knowledge. This is an echo. It reminds me of a verse. Vijay told me when he first came here that this is a verse that was so important to his commitment, to book distribution, which he's been doing now since '78. Very exemplary. And it's right near the beginning. The verse, Matra Sparshasta Kaunteya, about tolerance. So the context of the verse is, Krishna first says, Dehinos minyata dehi komanam yovanangjada. Because he's trying to get Arjuna off the bodily platform. And he's thinking, oh, this is my relative, this is my grandfather, this is my teacher. I have all these bonds. I don't want to kill them. I love them. So he's saying that no one dies. We just move through the body, and then you get another body. And the dhira, the sober person, is not bewildered by such a change. And the way it had been edited is Prabhupada said sober, and the editor had put self-realized. And the self-realized soul is not bewildered by such a change. Well, to me, that meant the person who's dying is not bewildered. But that's not what it's about. It's about the person witnessing this. Arjuna is going to witness, even be responsible for the death of his friends. And he shouldn't be thrown for a loop by this, So, Dhiras tatanamuyati. And then the next verse says, Yaminabdayantyete purusham purushashapa samadukha sukham dhiram, same word, somritattvaya kalpate. That one who is not disturbed by the dualities of this world, heat and cold, pleasure and pain, but is steady in both, is eligible for liberation. Eligible for liberation. So this is what that Krishna is talking about here. Samak siddha asiddhau. that steady in success and failure. That's a wonderful quality to have, because in this life there's going to be success, there's going to be failure, and we don't want to get completely jubilant and overexcited about success, and we don't want to get thrown into the despair by failure. So how does that happen? Well, it's not our result. In other words, we're working for some goal that has been presented to us in Krishna consciousness. And we do the best we can. We bring everything in. We pray for success. But if it's not a success, that's up to Krishna. Somehow he didn't want us to have success. He's testing us to see if we're... And you just go on. Because it's not your job. You're trying to serve Krishna in a certain way. So that's essential, that equipoise. We keep coming on the equipoise, equilibrium of mind, so that you can come to the point of constantly remembering Krishna positively. So, and this phrase, somehow this one stuck in my head when I first read it. Yadrisha labha santushto. It's a complete idea. Whatever comes of its own accord, that's satisfying. And that comes in Krishna consciousness. Sometimes you'll be in opulence, sometimes you'll be this, sometimes the prasadam will be there, sometimes it won't. Sometimes the prasadam will be there, but everything you wanted is already taken. Now you have to just take a little dal and rice. Are you going to be satisfied? So, oh, this dal and rice was offered to Krishna. How rare is it, right? So yadricha labha santushto, to be santushta, completely satisfied, which comes easily. And dvandvatito. Now remember, let's come back to this verse. Bhayam dutiya abhinavesha, that fear comes when we get too much absorbed in the dualities of this world. And how does that come? Originally, when we turn our back on Krishna, we forget Krishna. Isha apetasya. This is a very important phrase. Isha is the Lord, this controller, Krishna. Apetasya means turning aside. Vimukha cetasa, to turn your face away from. Isha apetasya viparyo asmriti. Viparyo means everything's backwards. Suddenly, instead of understanding I'm part and parcel of Krishna and he's the center and I should serve him, said I'm the center. This is the false ego. Is it pleasing to me? Am I getting my praise? Me, and then before you know it, you're in the demon's mood. So, dvandvatito, having transcended or surpassed this duality, you're not thrown by the heat and cold, pleasure and pain in this world. You have a higher mission. You're moving through this world of duality, and coming to the point, of Vaikuntha, where there's no duality. Everything is blissful. So to be beyond the dualities of this world, tolerance, and vimatsuraha, free from envy. How does envy develop? Envy in two ways. Envy means bearing malice, Prabhupada gave us this, envious, or it means the usual means of wanting something someone else wants. But this word matsura means malice, means being angry and hateful toward others because they have something you want or whatever. So vimatsura, free from that. Why should you be envious? If you're actually Krishna conscious, you have the most valuable thing. You have remembrance of Krishna, which is an endless source of happiness. Tunde tandabani ting batunati tundavali labde. Rupa Goswami says, I don't know how much nectar these two syllables Krishna have produced. So if one has purified his consciousness such that he can relish the chanting of Krishna's name, and how much expenditure does that take? None. You always have it. It's always available. So you see, you've short-circuited the whole Maya's trick. She's tempting you with this and that, but you're not tempted. I've already got the source of complete happiness. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. That's how it works. So therefore, you can go beyond the duality, heat and cold, all these things. You can continue to chant, take shelter, transcend the dualities. And therefore, in success or failure, you're equipoised, kritva binana bhajate. Whatever you do in that mentality is not binding. It's devotional service. It binds you to Krishna rather than to the matter. You got to be bound up to something. What is the essential verse describing genuine vairagya, yukta vairagya? Mukund, do you know this one? Yukta vairagya? Yeah. Using anasaktasya vishaya? Anasaktasya vishaya? Okay. So do you know the basic idea? Yeah. 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 That's anasakta vishayan. Vishayan are the object of the senses. But not using them to satisfy your sense gratification, not attached to them, but not rejecting them. Vishayan yataham apayunjita, but engaging them where appropriate in Krishna service. Just like this building, right? Building was a warehouse or whatever it was, or a movie theater. So Gurunagai Maharaj saw it, and like, we can use this Krishna service. They came in here, spent a year creating it into what it is now, you know, with all the sculpture and the painting and everything, unique in ISKCON, really. And now it's become a wonderful facility for serving Krishna. So we can do that in our own lives also. Apartment, this and that, Lakshmi, you know. Anasakta vishayan yataham apayunja nirbandha Krishna sambandhe. You're not bound up by your attachment to the things of this world, but through the things of this world, you're becoming bound up through attachment to Krishna, which is what we want. You got to be attached. Krishna sambandhe yuktam vairagya muchyate. This is vairagya in yoga. And vairagya is essential. All right. Any other discussion here on this? No proprietorship. Oh, yeah, okay, I'm sorry. Above duality, does not hesitate to act in any way for the satisfaction of Krishna. Okay. Gata sangasya muktasya jnanavastita chetasaha yagyayachadata karma samagram prabaliyate. The work of a man who is unattached to the modes of material nature and who is fully situated in transcendental knowledge merges entirely into transcendence. Purport: becoming fully Krishna conscious, one is freed from all dualities and thus is free from the contaminations of the material modes. He can become liberated because he knows his constitutional position in relationship with Krishna, and thus his mind cannot be drawn from Krishna consciousness. Consequently, whatever he does for Krishna, who is the primeval Vishnu. Therefore, all his works are technically sacrifices because sacrifice aims at satisfying the Supreme Person, Krishna or Vishnu. The resultant reactions to all such works certainly merge into transcendence, and one does not suffer material effects. So this is the beginning of a section here where he's talking in terms of different kinds of sacrifice. In one sense, you can see that bhakti is a sacrifice. You know, what are you doing? You're sacrificing your own interests for the interests of Krishna. You're sacrificing your Lakshmi for Krishna. Your vital energy is sacrifice. You can see it that way. And the advantage is, although it is a sacrifice, you're sacrificing the material relationship you might have with those things for cementing and developing your relationship with Krishna. So really it's a Sankirtan Jagya, it's called. My Prabhupada would often, and in these purports, when he talks about Jagya, you often come back to that. This is the sacrifice of the age. So what kind of sacrifice is it? All right, you have to sacrifice your time. Sometimes you sacrifice your voice. But it's feasible. It's much easier. And you read about these Ashvamedha sacrifices. Oh, you have to have so many Brahmins to pronounce exactly correctly, and you have to hire the Brahmins who are going to be the referees on the Brahmins actually doing it in case they make a mistake, right? That itself, I can imagine how many thousands of dollars it would cost. Then there's the ghee. You're going to pour it into. You know how much ghee costs? So much, too much. And just to get the instructions to how to do, it's not feasible. It's not, and the greatest thing is it's not necessary. The greatest sacrifice, the most efficacious sacrifice, is this Sankirtan Jagya. And the goal is not going to heaven, get good karma. No, the goal is breaking out completely from this birth and death, and return, go back to God, where we came from, and we shouldn't have left, to resume our life of eternal bliss and knowledge that is our due. So it's the most efficacious. No one is barred. If you try to go to India and try to practice these other sacrifices, you're not qualified. What's your gotra? Are you kidding me? Maybe you have a nice goatee, you can do it. But you know, 6.5, 7 billion people are disqualified. There's maybe a few 100 million in India. No, this is a sacrifice for every living being. You know, Lord Chaitanya said even the animals can do it. So it's the most merciful and most efficacious, and it leads to the greatest result. Yes, you have to sacrifice your time, you know. And the most thing is, what's the price? You remember that song, Lord Nityananda? He's opened the marketplace of the holy name, and he's selling the holy name. What's the price? You remember? Your faith. You have to have faith. If you don't have faith, then you're not going to buy it. So that's what Srila Prabhupada came to give us. By his doing it, you know, by beating that little half a bongo drum and chanting, devotees people were amazed and curious and fortunate enough to try it. And by trying it, you get some experience, and that nourishes your faith. And then when you hear the philosophy, oh, okay, you know. And the whole thing is built on your willingness to suspend your disbelief, take part in the process, feel the results, and Krishna from within the heart, he's saying, oh, this person is chanting my name, let me purify, let me give him, you know, some. Shrinvatam sakata Krishna punya shabana kirtana karidyantaksto yabhadrani vidunoti suritsatam. When Krishna understands that you're hearing Shrinvatam, his own kata about him, holy name included, which alone brings punya. Just chanting it, you become pious. Punya Shravana Kirtan, by hearing and chanting. Ridyantaksto, Krishna is within the heart. Abhadrani vidunoti, and he cleanses away, he starts cleansing away the abhadras, the unwanted things, the lust, the greed, the anger, the illusion, the madness, the intoxication, and everything. Vidunoti suritsatam, because he's the best friend, the eternal well-wisher of his devotees. So this is the great advantage of this yajna. Immediately, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is pleased, even if you're not chanting purely, and he starts the purification process. So that's, you know, perfectly indicated here. It all merges into transcendence. There's no material result from this chanting. It's all transcendental result. So that's what we're looking for. All right, it's almost time to end. Let me give you a little poem. All right, we have time. I don't have time for this song, but the prayer to always have the beautiful lotus face of Krishna growing in the lake of our heart. Smita duchimakabanda syandi bhaktaravindam tavapada padahangsan vishtagandham mukunda vidachata pashupali neta sarangarangam mamadidiyata dage sangamangi karotu. From the lotus of your face, dear Lord, you can visualize Giridhari. From the lotus of your face, dear Lord, trickles forth the luscious beauty of the nectar of your smile. Your exalted devotees, great swans, seek the fragrance of that lotus which does all their hearts beguile. Your beloved gopis' eyes, mad bees, taste the most exquisite pleasure in that lotus of your face. O my dear Mukunda Dev, I pray, may the lake of my poor heart be by that lotus ever graced. You can pray like that to Giridhari. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Bol.